What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for November 11, 2022. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. I thought we had a pretty quality edition of SmackDown on Friday, quite honestly. Starting with a great tag team title matchup with the New Day losing to the Usos, causing the Usos, as of this coming Monday, to become the longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. We also had the kickoff, the World Cup, where the winner, I don't know if I talked about this last week, and I know I didn't because we didn't do a SmackDown review last week, audio-wise anyway. I just remembered that. But we are getting a World Cup on SmackDown leading into Survivor Series. I would assume it culminates there with the winner, because we only have a few weeks until Survivor Series. So I was thinking originally that they would do the title match itself. The Intercontinental Championship will be at stake for the winner of this cup. You don't win the championship by winning the cup, but the winner of the tournament will earn an opportunity to wrestle Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. The way that this is playing out, we're having, two quarterfinal matches, this past week, that being last night, two more next week, and then the semifinals in 2 weeks. That's the go-home show for Survivor Series in 2 weeks, because today's the 12th, yesterday was the 11th, next week is the 18th, the following week is Black Friday, which means that Survivor Series is that Saturday the following day. So they're not going to be able to culminate the tournament before Survivor Series. I think it's a lot more likely, which this has been a recurring theme in recent months, where they have the championship defended on SmackDown in the main event. We saw that last week with Rey Mysterio, which was a great match. I did not have a chance to discuss that here last week because the pay-per-view was on Saturday. We don't usually do SmackDown audio reviews on the weekends of pay-per-views because the pay-per-views are so... especially that one. That one happened at noon Eastern time on Saturday, so I didn't really have a chance to talk about it, but it was a good show. We had Gunther and Rey on SmackDown main event last week. Sheamus and Gunther 2 was the main event of SmackDown right before Extreme Rules, so we did not get the championship defense on Extreme Rules. And then the only match that Gunther has had on pay-per-view for the title was at Clash of the Castle when he faced Sheamus the first time. Him and Nakamura was also the main event of SmackDown, but that was in August. Not on the pay-per-view. That was on SmackDown as well in the main event. So I assume that Gunther faces the winner of the tournament on SmackDown, maybe the subsequent SmackDown after Survivor Series. I assume they do the finals of the tournament at the pay-per-view itself. What the finals will look like, I'm not sure, because we know who's in it. I don't think we have an actual bracket for the World Cup. I could be wrong here, and I'm not sure who's facing who. Like, for example, spoiler alert, we saw Braun Strowman and Santos Escobar qualify on this show. They both qualified for not for the tournament, but for the semifinals. They both advanced past the quarterfinals by beating Shinsuke Nakamura and Jinder Mahal, respectively. They're not facing each other in the semifinals. We know that. Next week, we're getting Mustafa Ali versus Ricochet in another quarterfinal match, as well as Sami Zayn versus Pete Dunne. I don't know if it was made clear, and maybe it is and I'm just being dumb, but I have not seen a formal bracket for the tournament. I don't know if they've clarified who the winners of those matches will be facing in the semifinals. So let's say, Ricochet wins next week. Does he face Braun Strowman, or does he face Santos Escobar? I would absolutely love the winner of that match between Ali and Ricochet to face Strowman. I think that would be fucking funny. I don't think he is. It's probably going to be Ricochet or Ali versus Escobar, and then Escobar goes to the finals, I would assume. And then the winner of Zayn and Pete Dunne, whatever, Butch. I assume Sami Zayn wins. Sami Zayn will be in WarGames. We know that, as will Butch. So they kind of cancel each other out. They're having a match next week. I assume that the winner of that match then faces Braun in 2 weeks, and then Braun wins. And like I said, we get Braun and Santos at the pay-per-view. Kind of a random match, but it's something new, and I assume Braun wins the match. And, Escobar probably won't lose much in defeat, but whatever. So, again, I don't know that for a fact. Like I said, I would love if we got Strowman versus either Ricochet or Ali in the semifinals, coming off the dumb tweets that Strowman put out earlier this week, coming out of Crown Jewel about the whole flippy-floppy high-flyer bullshit. Not the first time he said something like that, but this time, and probably the last time too, completely out of nowhere, unjustified. If you want to fire back at the fans, I get it, because you went out there, you had a good match, or a decent match with Omos at the pay-per-view, cool. But for him to come out and make the dumb comments he did for literally no fucking reason at all, made him look like an idiot. Made him look like a giant moron, thus proving Shane McMahon's comments about him true in the lead-up to WrestleMania back in 2021. But anyway, I thought this was a thumbs-up show with a kickoff to the World Cup. We had the tag team title match, as I mentioned, and the setup for the men's WarGames match. We got the setup for the women's WarGames on Monday's Raw. Now we have the setup for the men's WarGames playing out probably exclusively on SmackDown leading into the show. We do not have much time before Survivor Series. Survivor Series is 2 weeks from today. We have 2 Raws left. We have 2 SmackDowns left. Interestingly, I will be at SmackDown, very likely, for the next 2 weeks, both next Friday and the week after that. So next week they're in Hartford, and I'm from Connecticut, so that's an easy go. So I'm definitely, hopefully going to that. And then the weekend after that, no, review that week, obviously, because Survivor Series is the next day. And like I just said, I don't usually do SmackDown reviews the weekends of pay-per-views, so the pay-per-view falls on a Saturday, which it has pretty much the entire year. But I'll probably be at that show too, because I'm going to Survivor Series. They're going to be in Boston, again, very close. And they'll be in Providence for SmackDown the day before. And I'm probably going to that show as well. So I'll be at SmackDown the next 2 weeks, and I'll give my on-site report, not for the show in 2 weeks, but definitely for next week here on the show. So keep an ear and an eye out for that. But anyway, we had the men's WarGames set up on the show. We had the return of the Viking Raiders and a number 1 contender crowned for the SmackDown Women's Championship at the pay-per-view. And the setup for very likely Bray Wyatt's first in-ring rival, that being L.A. Knight. Yeah, that's what they're doing. That's the match they're doing, which I don't think anyone could have predicted. But I'm very happy to see that. Now, I did not write that down in my written review of SmackDown over at WrestleRant.com. Cheap plug, check it out. I'll talk about it now. I really like the idea of L.A. Knight being Bray Wyatt's first rival. Now, I know L.A. Knight just got repackaged. You probably want to give him more wins. The only 2 wins he's picked up so far as L.A. Knight have been against Mansoor, the former Mansoor, and Ricochet a couple of weeks ago. Only 2 wins, so it's not as if he's on this 10-match winning streak. Him losing to Bray Wyatt, to me, is perfectly fine. I honestly thought it would be a while before we got Bray Wyatt's first match. Maybe they saved this for the Rumble. I don't know if we need a 2-month build-up for LA Knight versus Bray Wyatt. But making this Bray Wyatt's first feud, and it doesn't need to be dragged out for 6 months. They could just have a mini build to their first match, very likely being at Survivor Series. Bray's first match on that show, he faces LA Knight. LA Knight gets the big stage, gets to brush shoulders with a big star in Bray Wyatt. I think this is a win-win. And the promos can be really good too. What we got last night, that small taste of LA Knight kind of calling out the supernatural crap of Bray Wyatt, which it's not exactly crap, but I've enjoyed what they've done with Bray Wyatt so far on SmackDown. No progression of the whole Uncle Howdy thing this week. We got a lot of that at Crown Jewel and a couple of weeks prior, so the fact they didn't really progress that is fine with me. We finally saw him interact with another member of the roster. That, to me, was key. And I think it's very likely that we get their match at the Survivor Series pay-per-view. That's the real takeaway from this. And I'm looking forward to that. Again, I think even though LA Knight is likely losing, and he probably should, Bray Wyatt should definitely not lose his first match back. They've made a lot of dumb booking decisions with Bray Wyatt. Losing to LA Knight, who I love, would be another one in their first match back. That being said, I'm looking forward to that, and I think it takes place at Survivor Series. So this Survivor Series card is coming together nicely. Not the sexiest card in the world, but between the 2 WarGames matches, we have a women's title match announced for SmackDown, which isn't overly appealing on paper. We'll get to that. Very likely the finals of the World Cup. It should be a good show. And maybe even Bobby Lashley versus Rollins over from Raw for the United States Championship. So let's start from the beginning here as far as what I wrote down. I didn't want to forget about LA Knight versus Bray Wyatt and talking about that. We had the Usos defending their undisputed WWE Tag Team titles against the New Day's Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. Now, this was the direction we always expected them to go in for like the last month. The New Day teased chasing the titles like a month ago. They brought up how the Usos were set to break their record this coming weekend. I think they tie the record on Sunday. They officially break the record on Monday. Michael Cole made the comment on this show, and he also acknowledged, like he mentioned CMLL at one point. He promoted Shinsuke versus Great Muta. He did not mention in Pro Wrestling Noah, but he did mention that they're doing that match on New Year's Day, which is fucking cool in Japan, that he even acknowledged that, because they didn't really have to. It's not like they said, oh, this is where you can watch it. They just acknowledge that it's happening, which is cool. But anyway, Michael Cole mentioned that there are no tag team title matches set between now and Monday, meaning the Usos are not working the house shows this week defending those tag team titles. Unless one of them gets seriously hurt in the next 48 hours and they have to give up the belts, they're breaking the record. but they built it all around the drama of them breaking the record. And I honestly really like the fact they saved it for SmackDown and not Crown Jewel. They could have very easily done this match at Crown Jewel, but Crown Jewel was last week. It wasn't this weekend. So they had them and the Brawling Brutes last week, had a really good match at the pay-per-view, and they had this match here as a great attraction for SmackDown, and we are literally days away, not a week away, not a month away, but days away from them breaking the record. And I thought it was awesome that they waited until today, or rather Friday, to do the match. Now, it's a match we've seen a million times. Was this a fresh match? No. I said before, I had no desire to see the Usos and New Day again for a very long time, coming off their most recent feud. They had a million more matches earlier this year. That was the last time we saw this match, the Usos and New Day back at day one. Had a great match on that show, don't get me wrong. It wasn't Big E. I think it was also Kofi and Xavier at that point, too. The Usos won. That was before they became the Undisputed Tag Team Champions, but they were still the SmackDown Tag Team Champions at that point. And they were able to beat them then, and they beat them again in a rematch that following week on SmackDown in a street fight, which was also a great match. I was there for that one in, I think it was Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And they had another match here. Now, I loved the build-up for this match, because again, not only did they acknowledge the New Day wanted to, break the Usos' reign before they could break the record, they kind of set it up last week on SmackDown with a segment also involving the Brutes, and they had that great, what I thought was an awesome promo exchange on Monday's Raw, talking about the record, both teams getting not great digs in, but making great points about the pressure and almost getting fired as far as the New Day goes, and making something out of nothing as far as the New Day goes, and again, the Usos living up to their family's name and overcoming that pressure and becoming one of the greatest tag teams of all time in WWE. I don't know if I would put them at the top, but they would certainly be towards the top of that list, and the New Day as well. But anyway, this I thought was a great match, great suspense, got a ton of time, almost well over 20 minutes. The crowd was into it by the end. They had some great near falls. One of the near falls included the Usos hitting their double splash on, I think it was Kofi, and maybe it was Woods. One of them kicked out. They kicked out of the double splash, which we do not see often. I don't honestly know how many times that's actually happened. I'm sure it's happened at least once or twice before. But we don't see that often where maybe they kick out of one splash, but when the Usos do their double splash, it's basically a guaranteed victory for them. But they kicked out whoever it was. Again, I forgot whether it was Kofi or Xavier, my apologies. But they ended up picking up the win via a 1D off the top rope. And that was it. Kofi could not kick out of that, and they secured the victory. So great stuff. The Usos now officially, as of this coming Monday, unless the world ends before then, are the longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. Now, in the case of, to be fair, the New Day will still remain the longest reigning Raw tag team champions of all time. The New Day, or the Usos, are the longest reigning SmackDown tag team champions of all time. They did not break the New Day's singular reign as Raw Tag Team Champions. They are simply the longest reigning tag team champions ever in WWE history. Like, for example, Demolition, that was the whole thing with the New Day. They had to break Demolition's record back in 2016 as the longest reigning tag team champions of all time. But it wasn't the belts they held at that point. Demolition will always be, and will forever be, unless they bring back the belts and that lineage of it, which they're not, the longest reigning world tag team champions in WWE history. The Raw Tag Team titles are not the World Tag Team titles. They carry the lineage, the Raw Tag Team titles do, of the WWE Tag Team titles from SmackDown that started in 2002. I know this sounds very confusing, but for us nerds out there, this makes sense. So the Usos overall will be the longest reigning Tag Team champions ever. I think Gallus had a little bit longer of a reign over in NXT UK via the pandemic. I don't know if that's true or not. I think they have, though. I mean, their reign isn't recognized as being 490 days because it didn't air until a month or two later. But if we're counting when it was taped, I think they have a longer reign than the Usos, but the Usos just had to hold on to the championships for another 2 weeks and they break that record too. But anyway, I thought this was great stuff and an awesome way to kick off the show. I was surprised initially they opened the show with this as opposed to closing the show with it. But it actually worked out for the better because it wasn't as if, we're closing in on 10 o'clock. The match is going to end any minute now. No, this could have gone as long as they wanted it to. And it also made sense with what we got instead with the setup for the men's WarGames match at the end of the show. So that made sense. The official kickoff to the World Cup, the SmackDown World Cup as they're calling it, saw Santos Escobar take on Shinsuke Nakamura, which I don't know if it was announced initially as a World Cup match. They added that later on. But Escobar representing Mexico, Nakamura representing Japan, it just made sense. And it wasn't a random match either. Escobar and Nakamura collided in that six-man tag team match when Legado took on Nakamura and Hit Row a week or two ago on SmackDown. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So they had that going for it. And Escobar was able to avenge that loss, pick up a win over Nakamura here in a good match. It was entertaining, as expected. Great finish, too. Escobar hitting his, I forgot what it's called, but that driver or whatever it is, off the top rope. It looked great. And Escobar wins via interference. I wish Triple H would stop doing this. Maybe it's his way of adding heat to heels who don't have heat that the crowd isn't overly familiar with. People like Karrion Kross, and now Escobar, among others, Damage Control. But we see so much fucking interference in these heels matches. Why can't they just win clean for a change? I hope Escobar, whoever he faces next, and if he faces Ricochet or Ali, I mean, if it's, what's the other quarterfinal match? Pete Dunne or Butch versus Sami Zayn? I think it's probably going to be Ali versus Ricochet. Hopefully he can beat that person clean. He does not need to beat one of those two with fucking interference. Nakamura, I kind of get if you want to protect him. Still not overly necessary, but whatever. This was a good match, though. I'm digging the Legato act, and they need more heat, but giving Escobar his first win in SmackDown singles competition was the right call. We then had a six-pack challenge for to determine the number one contender to the SmackDown Women's Championship against Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series. I feel like this is the third or fourth multi-women match Triple H has done since taking over back over the summer. I know Shayna won a multi-women's match. I think it was a gauntlet match to win the title shot at Clash of the Castle. When they did Liv versus... I know Ronda won a multi-match too to earn the opportunity at Extreme Rules, I think. Because I remember her... I think it was like a five-way. Maybe it was elimination style. She eliminated the majority of the people. And I think she pinned or submitted Lacey to win or whatever it was. I remember that. So they've done at least two. And that was for Extreme Rules. And Ronda hasn't had any defenses since then aside from facing Emma 2 weeks ago. So I think that was it. But this was still the third consecutive time where they've had a number one contenders match with the women on SmackDown. And it's almost always the exact same women. Without even me telling you, you could probably guess who it was. But Shotzi was in there. Lacey Evans, Xia Li, Liv Morgan, Sonya, Raquel Rodriguez. And you're probably thinking, well, who else do you expect? Women from Raw? No, but at the same time, it should probably be closer to like a triple threat or a singles match. I mean, listen, I'm all for doing number one contenders matches and not doing the dumb championship contender shit. This makes more sense. But when it's the same women every time, and it's women who don't really matter and aren't doing anything of note right now, that's my issue. I mean, Liv Morgan already lost to Ronda Rousey at Extreme Rules. Granted, she never got a rematch, so her being in here was fine. She also beat Sonya last week in that great no disqualification match. That being said, why the fuck was Sonya Deville in this match? I like Sonya, but she had no business being in this match. She lost clean as a sheet to Liv Morgan last week. She has been made to look like a loser at every turn. I can't even remember the last match she won on TV. She should not have been in this thing. Xia Li, I thought, was starting a program with Emma. They teased that last week. That went nowhere, apparently, because now Emma is doing something with Madcap Moss, which was teased later on. So, I don't even, again, don't know the last time that she won a match on SmackDown. I think she won all of one match initially in her debut, and we haven't seen her since. Natalya was not in this thing because she was hurt last week by Sheena. I think she's going to be out for a couple months. I think because of that, for the nose surgery, interestingly enough. Not that I'm going to miss her, but it is worth noting. Again, Lacey Evans, why the fuck was she even in this match? Aside to take the pinfall loss. I know that. She took the pinfall loss here with Shotzi. She should have not been in this thing. Realistically, it really should have been maybe Raquel, maybe, but even she hasn't really done anything overly impressive lately. Shotzi didn't even really earn any opportunities to be in this match. She and Raquel lost that tag team title match about a month ago, but we haven't really seen them since. So, Liv Morgan, I mean, that's the problem, though. Liv Morgan just getting the shot just because she hasn't gotten her rematch, which they don't do in the main roster anymore, wouldn't have been overly interesting because we've already seen Liv and Ronda 3 times, and I have no desire to see it again, at least anytime soon. Honestly, none of these matches were intriguing to me. Shotzi is a little more interesting, but it's a match we've already seen once or twice. I remember when Ronda beat her in fucking 90 seconds on SmackDown a few months ago. They may have had another match on SmackDown back in June, I think, but Ronda won that with ease as well. I do not take Shotzi as a threat to face Ronda Rousey. And someone argued, oh, it's under different leadership. I don't care. Shotzi is not a threat to that title. She's just not. They can have her beat Shayna next week, and that's wonderful. I guess you're going to have her beat Baszler, but they'll probably do like a DQ or something, because they're kind of building up and protecting Baszler too, now that she's aligned with Ronda Rousey. But between the Baszler connection and Shotzi just not being just a very big threat, and the whole underdog thing, we already did that with Liv Morgan. Shotzi is not getting the upset win over Ronda Rousey. It's a nice little attraction for that show, but honestly, it's unnecessary. If you don't have a worthy title match for the SmackDown women on that show, then don't do it. Give that match slot to someone else. I would rather see Gunther versus anyone on that show than anything involving Ronda Rousey right now. No knock on Ronda. A lot of people don't like Ronda. I do, but there's just no interesting opponents for her right now. Since Baszler is an ally of Ronda and not an opponent, you can't do that match right now. Shotzi, I like her better as a babyface. She's done better as a babyface lately. She's not going to be built up to really win the championship. I don't take her seriously as a threat to that title at all. That feels like the definition of a pre-show match. Lacey Evans, I'm shocked she's even still in the company. Xia Li, not overly shocked because she was a Triple H girl, but she has done nothing when she was on SmackDown with Vince, and even with Triple H in charge, she has done shit. Liv Morgan, been there, done that. Sonya, been there, done that, and she would lose anyway immediately. Raquel was probably the best choice, just because, yeah, we've seen Ronda and Raquel once or twice, but that was a while ago, and Raquel feels more like a threat to Ronda than fucking Shotzi does right now, but maybe they'll have a good match. I'm not sure. We'll see. This match itself was not very good. I applaud their effort. They worked hard. That tables botch was not good. It looked awful. I mean, shit happens, but it just did not look good at all. It was embarrassing. And then the camera stuck on fucking Liv Morgan. Unless my fucking feed froze, but the camera was stuck on Liv Morgan laying on top of Raquel at ringside for a good fucking minute. I am not even kidding. They cut to Sonya real quick and then back to Liv and Raquel. Because I think the idea was they were always supposed to get that shot because they were supposed to go through the table and they're selling the effects of the table. The problem is, nothing happened. They botched the spot, and no offense, like, maybe they got hurt legitimately, but it didn't look like it hurt very much. And, like, nothing really, I don't want them to get hurt, obviously, but, you know, it didn't look very devastating. So they should have pulled an audible and cut the camera elsewhere. I mean, the crowd was not happy with that, and the camera shot was just oddly lingering on them for some weird reason. Probably because that was the camera shot they were supposed to do originally, like I said. But then again, you improvise and figure something else out because it did not look good. That kind of ruined the match, which was not overly good anyway. And then Shotzi won by pinning Lacey Evans. So, yeah, we're getting Shotzi and Ronda the pay-per-view. I like Shotzi, but it's hard to care. I like that Ronda is cast as a heel. That's a positive. But the fact is this SmackDown Women's Division desperately needs help. Bringing in Emma is nice and all. That's a step in the right direction. But, like, this division needs someone like Sasha Banks. Or even a Naomi. Someone that's over. Someone that has some, not even, like, direction, but, like, is established. All of these women, the problem is that they're all on the same level. None of them feel remotely special. They're all stepping stones to whoever the champion is. None of them have any real character development at all. Lacey Evans was doing something for a little while under Vince, but then she got hurt, Triple H didn't push her, and then she's just been dead in the water. I saw that she might be teasing a character change. I saw that little video they put up after SmackDown. I mean, how anyone can really care, who knows, but we'll see where that goes. Xia Li is a loser. Sonya's a loser. Raquel and Shotzi are a little bit more over and have a little bit more development than some of the other women, but not a lot. Raquel is still this smiling babyface, which is just obnoxious. And Shotzi is good as an underdog babyface, but we kind of had that with Liv as well. And Liv was like this crazy oh, I'm crazy. And she wasn't really crazy here. I mean, she didn't really do anything overly psychotic. She was typical Liv Morgan. She still has the same music, entrance. She looks the same. She put on Chucky clothes last week. What did he fucking do? She didn't do anything this week that gave me the sense that she's a different woman than she was a month ago. So, sorry for the rant here, but this division needs help. They need stars. They need a real tentpole of this division because it's really just Ronda and then everyone else. And then you might be thinking, oh, what about Charlotte? Charlotte's not the answer. I mean, you're going to have to bring back Charlotte eventually, but Charlotte and Ronda, again, I don't really want to see that. Charlotte isn't the answer either because then Charlotte's going to come back and she's going to beat all these women. And Charlotte also was not that interesting even though she's been gone for 6 months. So they got to figure some shit out. Maybe do a trade with Raw or something because this division is just not interesting in the slightest. We had our second World Cup match, Braun Strowman beating the returning Jinder Mahal, who a lot of you probably forgot was even on the roster still. But yeah, I looked it up. Jinder has not had a match on SmackDown since Triple H took over. The timing is not is not at all a coincidence. Triple H has no desire to fucking use Jinder Mahal. And I'm sure he's a nice guy. I've interviewed him before. He's fine. He's just, I'm not even saying let go of him. I'm not even going to say, oh, this person should be fired, whatever. But I can't blame Triple H for not doing shit with Jinder. I mean, it was pretty funny because, I mean, it wasn't anything exciting, and I'm glad it was dropped. But under Vince, Jinder was on the show almost weekly doing that storyline with Shanky. It was stupid and it was bad, but he was on the show weekly to his credit. Triple H took over like the week after Jinder was on SmackDown back in July, and we have literally not seen him since. At least not in a match. I don't even know if he's done house shows. And the only reason he was brought back here is because of the World Cup. And I think he represented India here, although he's actually Canadian, but obviously he's of Indian descent as well, whatever. So he had that going for him. And that was the only real reason why he was in the World Cup. And then he got beat quickly. That's all you can ask for. Strowman wins immediately, and that was it. So Strowman, despite his dumb comments on social media, continues to be very over. And I think, honestly, he's probably the best person to win this whole World Cup. Because you look at who's left. Nakamura's gone. He already lost to Gunther anyway. Jinder Mahal got bumped, thank God. Probably shouldn't have been in it to begin with, but whatever. But I get why he was in it. So you have Strowman left. You have Escobar, who's a heel. I don't really think they're going to do Escobar. And I mean, Sheamus was a heel too when he became #1 contender. But then he turned babyface. I don't see Escobar going face anytime soon. So that would be a cool match. I don't see it happening. And then you have Sammy and you got Butch. They're both probably going to be in WarGames, especially Butch. Butch we know is going to be in WarGames because he was in that SmackDown to close the show. He was in that segment to close SmackDown this week, so I don't think Sami Zayn will win. Sammy and Gunther at some point would be awesome. I don't think it happens at, not at Survivor Series, but I don't think he's winning this World Cup. His focus will likely be on the WarGames stuff. Maybe that even ends in like a double countout, and like Escobar goes straight to the finals. That's very possible. Anyway, so then we have Ricochet and Ali. We've seen Ricochet and Gunther twice already. Don't really want to see that again. And Ali, I think he's a Raw guy. I think that's only temporary. I had seen other people say that. I think PW Insider reported everyone that was supposed to be in it was correct, except for Ali. Ali was not supposed to be in there. It was supposed to be Rey Mysterio. So I don't know if it was an injury thing or a booking thing. I don't think Ali is supposed to be on SmackDown. Maybe he gets moved to the roster at some point. I think Fightful even confirmed he wasn't officially part of SmackDown. I think this is only temporary. Him and Ricochet should have a great match next week, but I do expect him to lose. Ricochet wins, and then Ricochet loses to whoever in the semifinals. So if Ricochet beats Ali, and I don't think Ali and Gunther is a very, it sounds like a good match, but Ali is just, his booking has not been great. He just looks like a loser a lot of the time, and he's not really that over. Strowman, despite what you may think, is very much over. Say what you will about the guy, but the guy is over. And I think him and Gunther could be a good match. I don't want him beating Gunther for that Intercontinental title. Strowman's Intercontinental title reign from 2020 is probably one of the worst in the last 10, 15 years. He held the belt for like a month and a half, barely of that, and did shit with it. Did not do anything. So I don't really want to see him win, but as a match, that sounds cool. So I would want to see that. Up next here on SmackDown, we were supposed to get Zelina Vega versus B-Fab, which, thank the Lord, did not actually happen. Now, I know it was part of the whole Legato Hit Row feud. I get it, but I don't really want to see B-Fab in the ring. B-Fab, the last time we saw her in the ring last year, was fucking awful. I'm fine with her getting called up to the main roster with Hit Row, because the act, lost luster when she wasn't a part of it for the 2 weeks before the rest of Hit Row was released last year. They're not exactly lighting the world on fire right now, but I think Top Dollar and Ashanti the Adonis would be even worse off without her. But thankfully, the match did not happen. And this could have been even worse if it was Elektra Lopez in Zelina Vega's spot, but thankfully it was Vega and not Lopez, and Lopez is back in NXT. But the match never happened. They were interrupted before the bell could ring by the Viking Raiders music. They came out, laid waste to everyone. Zelina Vega was the only one that escaped unscathed. Raul Mendoza, or the new Cruz del Toro was his new name, whatever. Joaquin Wilde, the rest of this fucking Pee Wee Herman was out there also for the Escobar match as well. They got wrecked. The, Hit Row got wrecked. Top Dollar, Ashanti the Adonis. Even B-Fab got laid out by the returning Sarah Logan. She's been in the Viking Raiders vignettes for the last couple of weeks. I like the addition of Sarah Logan to the group. I was a little surprised years ago they never paired them together because it wasn't as if Sarah Logan was doing anything when Viking Raiders were around the first time. I mean, they worked without her, but as a heel group, I think it works. I don't know if they're going to be that much more over than they were originally, but The Viking Raiders, remember, won that Viking Rules match or whatever it was on SmackDown a few months ago. Then one of the guys got hurt, so they've been off ever since. But I like the idea to bring back Logan, not because she's a good worker. I mean, I think she was at one point on the Indies. I have not seen a single Sarah Logan singles match in WWE that would make me think, oh my God, push this woman on her own. I mean, the matches she was having on Main Event years ago with fucking Dana Brooke told me all I needed to know about Sarah Logan's in-ring work in 2020 or 2021 or whatever. She got cut 2.5 years ago. I do not want to see her in the ring at all. I really have no desire to see that, but as a manager, I think it works. It completes the act. She looks like fucking Max the Impaler. If you've watched the NWA, Impact, she's even been on Dark. I think she's been in MLW too. She's been in a variety of promotions in the last year or so. She was in Ring of Honor, maybe not MLW, but she was in Ring of Honor for a short time as well. She has the exact same look. And Max is actually not bad. She's grown on me. She's not bad at all. Sarah Logan, she's probably better in the ring than Sarah Logan is at this point. But she looks almost exactly like her. I don't know if she ripped the look from her or if that wasn't intentional. I don't know, but she looks almost exactly the same. Anyway, so I'm interested to see where this goes. Viking Raiders will probably kill Legato and they'll kill Hit Row. And we'll see what happens. I don't know if they get another match with the Usos for the tag titles or they just... I mean, they already beat the New Day twice. Then you shouldn't go back to that. So, and the New Day are free. I don't really want to see that again. I like the fact they're rebuilding the tag team division, though. I think that's a plus. So we'll see where they go with them going forward. And then the closing segment, Roman Reigns was supposed to give like this special announcement. I think they billed it as like a special moment. A special moment for Roman Reigns. And we never got to find out what that moment was. Now, I think it was supposed to be him acknowledging the Usos, because it sounded like he was about to acknowledge them before the Brawling Brutes came out. Ridge Holland and Butch. And they brought out Sheamus. They said they brought backup, and they brought out Sheamus, who we have not seen since he was laid out by the Bloodline 3 weeks ago on SmackDown. Now, in reality, he was taken off the show to go get married, and last week's SmackDown was taped the same night as the one from 2 weeks ago, so he had plenty of time to go get married, have his honeymoon, which is great. And now he's back on the show. And they brought backup as well in the form of Drew McIntyre. So they're doing what we all expected them to do and having people that were wronged by the Bloodline face the Bloodline inside WarGames, which is the right call to make. And I'm also kind of glad. I was hoping they would use more of the single spots for single stars and not Ridge and Butch. But Ridge and Butch being in there isn't completely random. I mean, they just had a match with the Usos at Crown Jewel. They had a match with the Usos for the tag titles back in September. So they have history. It's not like as if they're not, they have no history with the Bloodline. They do. It would have been nice if, like, Strowman was in there or someone like that. But, Strowman hasn't feuded with the Bloodline in a couple of years. He has history with Roman from, like, 2 to 5 years ago. But I understand him not being in there. He was busy with the World Cup anyway. Who else was I thinking of? Owens has to be the fifth guy. Only 4 people came out here. Owens has to be the fifth guy. And an insider tip, not really an insider tip, but next week's dark match, which is happening in Hartford, as I mentioned earlier, I got a commercial for SmackDown next week, like a local advertisement for SmackDown. The dark match is Kevin Owens versus Austin Theory. And neither of those guys are SmackDown stars. So the fact that that's the dark match, unless it changes, which it always does, it sounds like Owens is going to be in the building. I could certainly see a scenario where the show closes with Owens making the save and then him just staying out there for the dark match after the show goes off the air, facing Theory, and that's that. So it has to be Kevin Owens. No one else really makes sense. They are advertising both WarGames matches as being 5-on-5. So it was 4-on-4 here. I know Sami Zayn wasn't out there. I don't see Sami Zayn winning the World Cup or Butch. So it should be 5-on-5. Sami Zayn should be in there. He should take the pin. The Bloodline, I don't think, has lost a single match since they came together. Maybe Roman and Jay lost a tag team match a few years ago, maybe by DQ. For the most part, they have remained undefeated. The Usos and Sikoa won that 6-man on Raw when I didn't expect them to. The Usos and Roman won that 6-man back at Backlash against the RK Bro and Drew. They won a 6-man on Raw against, I think it was Riddle and I don't remember who it was, the Mysterios maybe? I don't know. They did a 6-man on Raw right before SummerSlam, I think, in MSG, and they won that too. So they've had, a fair share of multi-man matches. I think they've won every single one of them. So they might win again at WarGames, but with Sammy being involved this time, have Sammy be the one who gets pinned. I mean, I think they actually lost the 6-man. Every match that Sami Zayn's been involved with them in, for the most part, they've lost. So Sammy getting pinned by someone like Owens makes a lot of sense. So then Kevin Owens should be the 5th guy. The way this played out was fine. It was predictable, but it made sense. Good way to close the show. Drew getting back in there makes sense. I don't know what you do with Karrion and Cross from here. Drew and Karrion is clearly over, and I'm fine with that. I mean, the feud ended, and I'm good with that. I thought Cross might be in the World Cup. If they didn't have intentions of him winning the whole thing, then I understand why he's not in it. But I am curious where he goes from here. Maybe he feuds with Rey Mysterio or someone like that, because he's free right now too. He wasn't in the World Cup, but we'll see what happens. So Drew getting back at the Bloodline for them costing him the World Championship back at Clash makes a lot of sense. That was never finished. And he went face-to-face with Sikoa here, who he had that match with on SmackDown coming out of Clash, and Cross attacked him, and he won the match by DQ. And they never finished off that feud. So them going back to that, I think, is great. I'm a big fan of that. Sheamus being in there makes a lot of sense. They put him on the shelf for a couple weeks. Sheamus interacting with Roman again is cool for the first time in a long time. A match I had no desire to see again after the whole League of Nations bullshit from 7 years ago. I think it was 7 years ago, which is crazy to think about. But they have good chemistry, and I think that match is going to be good, too. The whole match, not just Roman and Sheamus, which I think is probably not going to happen. I guess they could do Roman and Sheamus at, the Rumble, maybe. Because Sheamus, I think, there aren't many people who have beaten Roman for a championship, but Sheamus is one of them. Roman, I think, is a 5-time champion, 6-time champion, whatever. One of the titles he had to vacate, the Universal title, back in 2020 or 2018 due to the leukemia diagnosis. He wasn't pinned for that. I don't remember, when else has he been beaten for a title? He lost the title in 2016. He lost 2 titles, actually. He was pinned for 2 titles. One by Rollins and Money in the Bank 2016. So you can go back to that. Rollins was another one I was hoping to have on this team. But Rollins is busy with Bobby Lashley, so I get it. But that, and then also Sheamus, when Sheamus pinned him at Survivor Series almost exactly 7 years ago to win the WWE title. After Roman won that tournament, and Sheamus cashed in Money in the Bank, and that was that. So, yeah, I would love to see Sheamus and Roman again, too. Now that I think about it, that would be a good match for the Rumble, I think, for the Undisputed title. Although Sheamus is not winning, it would be a great attraction, I think, for that show, and I think it would be a really good match. So anyway, that was SmackDown in a nutshell. That was my elongated review. Good show. I thought it was an easy-to-watch show, enjoyable, great tag team title match, easily the best part of the show. It did lose steam as the show went on. Escobar and Nakamura wasn't as strong as the opener, but that was better than the six-pack challenge, which was a bit of a mess. Strowman and Jinder was just kind of there. The Viking Raiders return I thought was well done. The crowd wasn't exactly into it, but all of these new acts and returning people they just haven't exactly cared for because they're all kind of like mid-carders or under-carders or whatever, but I do think they're valuable in different ways. And it closed on a high note with that WarGames setup. So a good thumbs-up show. Enjoyed SmackDown this week. And as I mentioned earlier, I will be at SmackDown for the next 2 weeks. So you can expect an on-site report here on the channel, hopefully next either Saturday or Sunday, giving my on-site report from SmackDown in Hartford. And I'll be at SmackDown very likely as well in Providence in 2 weeks. And I will not do a review for that one because Survivor Series is the next day, and I'll be busy that weekend. So another SmackDown audio review coming your way next Saturday, or at least next weekend here on the channel. You can like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Also hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video is uploaded here to the channel. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.